Very much. You probably noticed I've got a bit more hair than I have in your brochure, so don't be confused, it is me. And these are probably the smallest screens I've ever presented to, so I don't know how you're going to read all my pie charts and graphs and things. No, I'm only kidding, it's just pictures. I'm going to talk to you about Sky Central this morning. I didn't bring the BCO award with me, but it was pretty good a couple of days ago. Some of you might have seen we won a BCO award, London Region, for Best Corporate Workplace. That's the last you'll hear me mention it today. Did I tell you about the BCO award, Best Corporate? But before we start talking about Sky Central, anyone know who this is?
Jeremy Corbyn.
Good answer. Before or after the election? Or during? Anyone? Have a guess? I know one ancient Greek looks like another. It's Heraclitus. He is the only change management consultant you've ever needed. He actually said everything there is to say about change, really, when he said all is flux. And he was writing in Ephesus about 550 BC, which shows we've come a long way with change management ever since. But what's interesting is he also is famous for, obviously not that famous, certainly not in terms of portrait, but he's famous for another idea of his, which is called the unity of opposites. And when I was thinking a little while ago about a sort of how would I sort of model a case study that doesn't sort of just run like all of the other case studies of buildings you've ever heard before. The unity of opposites seemed like a good framework. So I'm offering this to you today really as a sort of briefing framework for a workplace, but also a way of describing Sky Central. And the unity of opposites holds that an idea or a thing can only exist really in terms of the fact that it has an opposite. So when we usually approach workplace briefing, we often look at it in terms of, is it going to be open environment? Is it going to be a closed environment? Is it going to be a sort of heavily branded environment? Is it going to be quite anonymous and low key? We've often thought about sort of briefing on a scale. And what I'm proposing here is that we can actually unify that scale and we can actually have everything. And so I'll be using that framework to talk about Sky Central. There's quite a lot to get through. I've only got probably about 25 minutes left, so we're going to go on a little bit of a roller coaster journey. And I'm going to introduce a number of sort of concepts to you. Before, other than one person in the room I definitely know has been to Sky Central. Has anybody been there? Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much. Right, thank you, I'm done. It is a beautiful space. I often sort of sit really at the sort of down here somewhere. Just really so I can take it all in on a day-to-day basis. Multiple lines, angles, and vistas. I still find and I've probably walked the building more than most. I still find things to look at. This is a building that's 163 metres by 100 metres on 3 levels and houses 3,500 people. That's 3,500 of the 7,500 people on the entire Osterley campus in West London for Sky. It's got both scale and intimacy, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. But we've although sort of every workplace case study tries to tell you that it's new, that it's innovative, that it's exciting in that respect, we've also recycled some very, very useful old ideas. One of those being Bürolandschaft, which is an idea from the 1950s, by imposing a 20-metre rule, which introduces an intimacy to an otherwise vast piece of architecture and brings it down to a human scale. But it also works. It has 18 neighbourhoods. It works at about 6.5 square metres a person. I would challenge anybody walking through the space to see it that way. So we're getting both effectiveness and efficiency from the space. And we put content at the heart of the business. We put content at the heart of the building. Those of you who watch Sky News will notice the glass box Sky News studio there, which cantilevers over the main street. So it really is a living, sort of breathing reflection of what Sky is all about. And of course we built it. Of course it's a piece of constructed material. In the early days I had to sort of convert it to a tower block scale because I was used to working in central business districts and everything comes in fairly regular size shaped tower blocks, and it would reach about 31 stories by our calculation. It took 2 years to build. It took 3.2 million hours to construct, so it is very much a constructed space. But we've used a lot of natural materials. You can see through the sort of timber ceiling. It's one of the largest timber roofs in Europe. A lot of skylights in that roof, which lets light in all over the space. We've got about 250 trees in the landscaping outside, and internally it's got 24,776 internal plants. And there's a lot of talk about biophilia and what a fantastic thing to do that is. Has anybody ever read any of the French philosopher Deleuze? If anybody comes across a really simple, sort of straightforward version of it, would be fantastic. But when I was thinking about sort of space being created and also grown, I came across Deleuze from a friend who used to be at Sheffield Hallam in his studies, and it needs an academic to actually interpret it, but the idea of sort of a model of sort of space that exists between the inside and the outside in what Deleuze calls a fold. And I'm still struggling to get to grips with this, but I sort of like the idea that the building itself actually connects the internal and the external environments. It's both a workplace and a category of its own. It's a workplace in the sense of we're proud it's an office, it does everything you expect an office to do, and it is a workplace first and foremost. We're not trying to pretend it's something else, we're not trying to claim it's a club or a hotel or reinvent it. It's a workplace, we want people to come there and do the best work of their careers. But at the same time, it's a mashup of a huge number of sort of design influences from retail, from leisure, from hotel, from catering. And we've pulled in a lot of those influences from other fields and other sectors to create this experience. And that gives us the opportunity to put comfort right at the heart of this space. I heard someone talking the other day and they were very proud of the fact that the design brief they gave to their workplace designers was make us feel uncomfortable. Well, that's the last thing we want to do. We actually want people to feel comfortable, to feel at ease with the space. We really don't want to scare people out of their wits or have to give them an encyclopedia on how to make the space work. So it is focused on people. This is an investment in people. As I said, it's about creating a space that where people can do the best work of their careers. It's an adult space, very grown up. It's not a kindergarten. And so, you know, this is a complete focus on people. This is all about people. You hear that quite a lot, but this is a sort of living, breathing example of it. We want to see great ideas emerge. We want to push those ideas hard. And our CEO talks about a sense of possibility. When I first heard that phrase, I sort of struggled initially to get my head around it, but I think that really captures what this investment in people is all about. But it's also a representation of the DNA of the business. It's very open. It's very egalitarian. It's very intuitive. We've made the space as easy as possible to navigate and understand, and to give people the widest possible freedom of where to work, where to move, and how to navigate the space. So no slides, no table tennis tables, no climbing walls, which is great for some organisations if that's what they want, and that ties in with the DNA of their business. That's fantastic. I often say about organisations like Google, one of the things they did for the industry, which is a significant contribution, is they gave people the freedom to think differently. But that doesn't mean copying everything they've done. So we very much set out on our own journey and our own path here. And by using the idea of the neighbourhoods, there are 18 neighbourhoods in the building, each supporting about 200 people each. And the idea of the word neighbour was that it makes a really strong appeal in our change journey to being a good neighbour, to being neighbourly. You don't need a PowerPoint deck to explain to someone what being a good neighbour means. You don't need to roll out hours and hours of protocol and etiquette training on what being a good neighbour is. We kind of intuitively, instinctively know what that means. And it sort of takes us really to, does anyone remember Bill and Ted's Great Adventure? Yeah, it's a fantastic film for one particular reason, which is the expression be excellent to each other, which is also, like I said, Heraclitus was the only change manager you ever need to understand. Well, the only HR policy you ever need really is the Bill and Ted approach to HR. So that really also ties into being a good neighbour. But also, it is playful. This is a shot of the 200-seat digital 4K Dolby Atmos sound cinema that's in the building. We have a 200-seat event space, and today, and I'm a little disappointed to be missing it, but we have Joshua and Klitschko coming into Sky Street, and they'll be sort of shaping up with each other, press conference, etc. That's all happening just underneath the studio you saw there in Sky Street. So it'll be a fantastic event today. I think productivity might dip for an hour or two, but I think everyone's going to massively enjoy that. And sitting behind all of this, as I'm sure those of you engaged in workplace will know, is a massive spreadsheet. It is all calculated. We really do have to understand the space types we put in the building, their sort of relationship to one another in terms of quantities. It's a finely tuned balance, but there are 5,000 places to sit, of which 2,500 of those are desks. Quick calculation for those of you who've got Excel open in the room, you'll realise that that's a 7 to 10 working ratio in terms of people and desks. But what that means is that there is more than enough space for everybody that is assigned to that building to be in at any point in time. And if half of those people brought a friend, there's still enough space for everybody in the building. And there's plenty of other spaces to go besides. And they're all set out over a seamless spectrum of space types. And the only real the only real jar in all of that is whether it's got a monitor on it or not. If it's got a monitor on it, it's counted as a desk. If it doesn't have a monitor of any sort, then it's not. But one of the learnings that really has sort of come into being over the last few months, there is a two-step process, and you can't buck the first step to liberating people from the desk, and that's power. And we've been slowly going around the building putting in more power sockets. I'm not even convinced half the time you need to actually wire them up. I think if you just put the power socket on a table, it says I can work here and it's fine, and everybody thinks, I can work here. There's no power socket. I can't possibly sit at this with my laptop, even though your laptop battery probably lasts 8 hours unless you plug it in all day and fry the battery. So that, it's swings and roundabouts, but gradually speaking, and this does occur over time, we are weaning people off the reliance on the desk. But there is a very seamless, very specifically calculated spectrum of space types that exists within the whole space. And I think in terms of it being intuitive, it's not just that the spaces themselves, you won't see any signs, you won't see any sort of descriptions of how space should be used. It's the space itself makes its own soft suggestions as to its best usage. We have some quiet desking, look a little bit more like library desks, which actually you can see on the left-hand image. It doesn't say shush, no phones or anything else. It just sort of softly tells you that that's what that space is for. But if you really can think of another use for it, and you're not going to be a bad neighbour by annoying everybody else, then that's fine too. But the radical thing we did, I think, in all of this is we actually gave the space to our colleagues. We worked with groups of 100 or more. We didn't plan the space down to the smallest non-divisible team size. We planned the space according to large groups because that gave everybody equal access to all of the different space types. And our colleagues were delighted when we told them that you know your business, you know your teams. Here's some sort of useful suggestions as to how you might get the best out of the space. Please be good neighbours to those around you, but effectively the space is yours. And we're going to, we might need to put a few bits of kit on desks and wire in a few special connections, but effectively here is the space. And that's really counterintuitive. That's really not what most organisations do. So we've sort of liberated people within that space, and they're reliant upon the sort of intuitive nature of the space types to be able to get the most out of it. It's got all the technology you would expect, Wi-Fi, Cat6 cabling, and each desk has got a single USB docking station, 27-inch monitor. Don't ever scrimp on the monitor size. It's amazing what you can do with a larger monitor. We got rid of half the dual monitors in the business by just increasing the size of the monitor by 3 inches. But always get the technology right first. I've had a lot of corporate visitors to Sky Central since. I usually sort of put it in order of priority: technology, toilets, coffee. If you can do those 3 things, everything else follows. But always get the technology right. The lightest, most portable possible technology will allow people to go on their own journey, discover those spaces, slowly but surely get themselves used to not plugging it in, and we'll get the most out of that space. And what you see there on the left-hand side is our Genius Lounge, Tech Central. All of your sort of telephony and IT needs. People come from all over the campus to go to this because it's much quicker and easier than logging a job. We went on a specific journey to try and get away from logging a job for absolutely anything. But there's also a lot of analog space in the building. While we talk about the building as being somewhere that's fantastic to find colleagues and collaborate and interact and all that great stuff, we also think it's a great place to get lost. And we also think that you should unplug, switch off, and just do analog things on a fairly regular basis as well. There's 6 cafes and restaurants. There's 2 mezzanines with lounge settings on. There's 2 atria with lounge settings and an olive grove. And the alternative settings are organically arranged with the desking. It's very easy to move from a desk to an alternative setting. You've probably been in spaces where, similar to this room, you've got all the desks on one side, all the breakout space on the other, and the sort of corridor of doom down the middle that you're not allowed to cross. without special dispensation. None of that, it's all thoroughly integrated. And it's designed to support work that people do now. So we're very respectful of the fact that we're not expecting everybody to change the way they work immediately. What we're expecting people to do is bring a lot of the current practices that have been successful for them with them, and the space supports that. So it's the sort of form follows function element of it. It's the sort of evidence-based element of it. You'll hear a lot of talk about evidence-based design. There was evidence that went into this. But that's only half the story. It's also got to support the way that work might be in the future. So it's got to be opportunity-focused at the same time as it's evidence-focused. And I really do believe there's a fairly equal balance in developing a workplace brief between evidence and opportunity. And the opportunity side of it then is the sort of function following the form. And the mix of those two enable everybody to get the best out of that space. There's enough variety and choice within that space for you to be able to sort of see the possibilities that the space offers. And we do rely to a huge extent on what we call tummelers. And tummelers are people who do things differently and talk about doing things differently. Tummel is a Yiddish word. The tummelers are the people at a Jewish wedding who encourage people to dance. So we have people in that building and we sort of set them free and point them in the right direction, and they go and work in different ways, and other people see that happening and they talk to them about it, and gradually speaking the journey unfolds. Again, in terms of looking at opposites, we want the space to support the sort of the objective view of productivity, which is the productivity of the business increasing, and there's a lot of talk about productivity. Interestingly, we seem to have abandoned productivity now. We're all talking about well-being instead, in the hope that well-being will drive increased productivity, because productivity was just too damn difficult a challenge for everybody to get their head around. So let's talk about something that's a little bit easier, which is well-being. Well, we think well-being is really easy, but it's probably going to be just as challenging as productivity. But in terms of the togetherness, we want people to work together. Sky is a business that recognises that people work better together, and so consequently, we want to make sure that there are enough spaces for people to interact, whether they have to book those or in the main they don't have to book those. And what you're seeing here is one of our rope houses. Really helps with the wayfinding and the sort of visual imprint of the space, but it's a space that anybody can rock up and use at any point in time. But we also have to support people's subjective view of productivity, which is, if you talk to someone about, did you have a good day? They'll say, yeah, I had a fantastic day. It was really productive today. Everyone left me alone, didn't go to any meetings, got my head down, got all my emails answered, inbox is empty, really productive. Well, is that what the organisation wanted you to be doing? And is that what the organisation expects you to be doing? Well, probably not, actually, because the organisation doesn't really care if you've got an empty inbox, but obviously you do. So what it cares about is you working with your colleagues and doing amazing stuff for the organisation. So the space allows people to work together and allows people to work alone. And in terms of those quiet spaces, really what we're trying to mask out is the disturbance and not the noise. There's a lot of focus on noise, but the most irritating thing is the tap on the shoulder when you're halfway through concentrating on something. You've got 5 minutes, which turns into 2 hours. So it just says, just leave me alone for a minute. It's a highly environmentally sustainable space designed to BREEAM Excellent. We run a it's not sort of packaged as such, but we do run a lot of wellbeing initiatives, including the Live Well sort of catering program, which extends into our health and fitness centre. I talked about the number of plants within the building, creating an environment that is calming and is sort of rejuvenating and regenerating. And there's a Halfords bike shop in the lower ground floor of the health and fitness centre, just across the courtyard, along with a hair and beauty salon and a nail bar and other sorts of things. Probably need to go. But it's also bold and risk-taking. There's not many organisations that would have built a building of this scale on this few floors of this nature in this way. I challenge you to find a space that looks even remarkably, remotely similar to this anywhere. So it was risk-taking, and at one stage we looked at potentially there would be a sort of village of smaller buildings on the campus. We've done something that we wanted to do rather than what the market told us to do. The market would have said design 6 smaller buildings. You might need to sublet some. You might need. They got to be quite vanilla. They got to be what everybody in the market expects. But we wanted a building that would get as many people under one roof on the campus as possible. So there are some standard elements. Yeah, we have desks. someone working at a desk, obviously with a bit of paper still, that's fine as well. And we partnered with a lot of established people within the business, partnered with the sort of Herman Millers and ergonoms and people like that. But we also got to know some new people as well. Desking is by a company called Collection, which is a Turkish product. So every time Turkey was in the news in the run-up to the delivery of the furniture, I was a little nervous. But it's and in doing so, we took about a third out of our cost plan during the course of developing the scheme. So continual process of ensuring that the design cohesion was maintained while being commercially sensitive. But we also sort of we tailored some stuff as well. We helped Orange Box. Just seeing, you can't see in the background. There's probably an image of an orange box pod. Internal meeting pods. We wanted some because we wanted some flexibility around our meeting spaces, but nothing in the market was quite right. So we were quite happy to work with the manufacturer on developing a particular solution. This stuff here is absolutely wonderful. We love these people. We love this product. It's sustainable timber from Romania. They've been over a few times. It goes together like Jenga blocks. It's amazing. It looks amazing. It comes with all the cracks and knots in it and things. And it's highly sustainable. Sustainable timber, we can relocate it. If it was drywall, we'd have to knock it down and throw it away. So none of it's gone in the skip. We've probably repositioned more of this in the building than anything else, actually. In fact, it was only, when we moved people in July and August last year, it was only last week that we actually put another row of desks in the building. But the alternative setting that was moved wasn't discarded, it was just moved to a different location. So it's the environment itself has sort of held together during that time. So in terms of the change program, we ran the change program ourselves. We moved 3,000 of those 3,500 people from their own desks, one-to-one working environments, from private offices. And we did that with a clear tone. We spent some time thinking about our lexicon, language, how we were going to talk to people. We talked to people like grown-ups. We learned from our previous projects. We didn't actually spend any money on external change advisors, spent a little bit of money on creative collateral, but we did all of this by sort of using our own internal resources and our own sort of understanding of Sky and what we were trying to achieve. It was very positive, outcome-focused change program. We've since been back over that and sort of reconceptualised what we did. But we had a plan, but it was quite a loose plan, and we were prepared to adapt and prepared to change that plan as the journey rolled on. One of the most successful bits of that was building what we called our live lab, which is a 300 square metre slice of Sky Central in our old gym that enabled people to actually sort of experience the space on a sort of fairly detailed scale. It enabled us to test everybody's technology, so everybody's laptop works when they went into the building. But one of the sort of things that I really do need to stress is we didn't do any etiquette training and we didn't do any protocol training, and we never mentioned the word adoption. We just talked to people sensibly, and our messages were sown through all of our interactions and all of the physical examples we provided. I was at a conference a couple of weeks ago where an organisation was proudly talking about a 6-month programme of etiquette and protocol training. You shouldn't need in a new workspace to explain to people how to behave. They should get it. They should understand it. The design should be intuitive enough. And I should say as well, it's often not mentioned, but your workplace design is your best change tool you have, because you're moving people to a fantastic new environment. So that's got to be the starting point for those conversations. But I can see that needs a little bit to sink in. Happy to talk to you about it afterwards. We learned from all of our previous projects. I've got a few examples here. Some of the sort of lessons were that move to what we called minimum units of planning of 100 people or more. Some of those departments said, treat us as one. Sales and marketing were about 550 people. They said, look, just give us all the space that sales and marketing will have, and we'll plan it, we'll sort it out. We introduced a far wider variety of desk types than we'd ever done before, because not all desks are the same. Not all desks need to be the same or look the same, and their functionality isn't all the same. There is essentially a desk, but it does different things. We just sort of tweaked the balance of spaces from the one example of a flexible workspace we had on campus, but we were constantly learning, constantly adapting, and we're still learning. Our change program still exists, our steering group still exists, our change leads are still mobilised. A couple of them said, "Can we go now?" They gave us a lot of their time from their day job, but workspace exists in a perpetual beta. It's never finished. It's never done. And this rolls on. Since we finished this project in the summer, we've moved another 3,000 people on the campus. 1,000 of those into one of our new buildings that was repurposed. So the program continues. And so in that sense, it's the end of one journey, but it's really the beginning of another. It's the beginning of another for Sky, but it's also the beginning of a journey for many of the individuals in that space. One of the things that sort of we used to get very hung up on with change management, and I mean as an industry broadly, is sort of focusing on those people who really don't want to do this, who really we don't think are going to get it in a sort of quite a risk managed sort of approach. We're quite happy that people's journeys can be quite long journeys. It's absolutely fine if people sort of can't quite initially let some of those old habits go. They don't need to be forced into this environment. What we want to be able to provide is enough opportunity for them to see the best way for themselves to work and to work that out, but also to go on that journey themselves, to go on a journey with colleagues, to watch other people working, talk to other people. So at all times we focused on those people who really were excited about it, were really positive about it, and that's because back to Heraclitus again, you know, all is flux. And I'm going to rattle through just a little bit of sort of what life used to be like. So 27 years earlier, this was the sort of aspirational picture of what Sky was all about, and I was really thinking about the building, but the car might have been aspirational in those days. And hadn't Volvo come a long way in all of that time? So, you know, these were some of the new buildings that were going up 27 years ago. And what's quite interesting is 27 years ago was when Bill and Ted's Great Adventure came out. And it was also the year that the internet was invented. So a lot happened. I'm also told it was the year Taylor Swift was born, but I don't think it's got anything to do with it at all. We saw a lot of working like this. Kind of, you know, anyone recognise their office here? Yeah. A lot of this going on. Sky Central doesn't know anything like this, but this is kind of how these buildings rolled on for many, many years in this way. And by sort of middle of 2016, our campus was looking like this, and I like this photo because it looks like this is the sort of party, and then when you look at it like this looks like the sort of walk of shame in the morning, doesn't it? With the sort of hangover. But you know, the campus has become enlivened, emboldened, and our people have been genuinely unleashed. And it really all began with Sky Studios in 2011, which was about 22,000 square metres of technical studio and office facilities. We're just moving the Sky News teams into here. It's one of our last moves on the campus to happen because the new studio is now in Sky Central. And this gallery controls all of the studio in Sky Central. So we see that glass box. There's no studio control there. It all is wired back. All the cameras are automatic and remote controlled. The hub opening in 2014 was our first agile workspace, and you can see here with people sitting out on the terrace, you know, in the sunshine, it sort of, you know, really did change the whole look, feel, and the ambience of the campus. This was really where the architectural style that led to Sky Central was established, and you know, really where we started bringing people together in open, agile environments. And when I think about the sort of, you know, the start, that was really the start of our sort of agile workplace journey as a team. And the time and effort and focus and energy and emotion and sweat we put into making that successful. But it had to be successful, because if it wasn't, we would never have been able to do that for 3,500 people. So the experience, the learning that we gleaned from that was incredibly useful in then being able to do projects as bold as Sky Central. And that was followed shortly by the Believe in Better building, which is actually Europe's largest wooden frame building. It was designed and built in a year. It houses our academy and conference and training facilities. We've recently just moved over the space of from this weekend and last night actually, just moved a couple of hundred of our product development group in here. There's probably been more people in this building in terms of since it opened than probably just about anywhere else. It's a lovely building that sort of, again, you know, in terms of establishing a style, this is really where we sort of played with a lot more timber and a lot more of that sort of natural look and feel. But we also went back into some of our older buildings. So some of those ones I showed you, the old sort of portal frame buildings, we went back into the building occupied by our creative team. They have to attract talent that would really like to go and work in Shoreditch, you know, and they have to come to Osterley. So we had to try and create a bit of Shoreditch in Osterley. This is a really low budget project, but we just We had our own desks built. We took all the ceilings out, put a rubber floor in, and just made it into a much more much more creative space. These are the sort of guys who used to climb on the desks and take the fluorescent tubes out, and we used to then come back in the evening, put them back in again, and next morning they'd come and take them out again. So we just decided to take them out once and for all. We then opened Leeds Dock in 2015. Leeds Dock is our software centre of excellence in a regeneration area. It was a former retail space. We put some mezzanines into that space. It won a BCO award a couple of weeks ago for project innovation, because it really does do some workplace stuff in different ways. We love the space. There's about 700 people in there. They love it. It's a really energised, sort of vibrant space, and really works for the sort of the kind of talent and the demographic that we're looking to attract in that space. And then we've got our health and fitness centre opened on our campus in Osterley. There's 7,500 people on the campus. There's over 4,000 members of this health and fitness centre. So it shows that we're doing the right thing there. We run it ourselves, and it's got the hair and beauty salon in there. Obviously, I'm well overdue a visit. And then we opened some spaces in central London as well. In Brick Lane, it's a very sort of uninteresting looking building externally, but it's a very important building for us. We opened just another floor of that building for technical teams. We also opened some space in Thomas More Square, which I think is actually just around the corner. Which again is sort of very modern, very open, very vibrant spaces, and these are a lot of our technology teams working in these spaces. And there's about 300 people in this particular space. And then in terms of the campus, on it goes. We're still working. I said it's perpetual beta. Our master plan is a sort of rolling master plan. Effectively, our business moves at a phenomenal pace. And therefore, the campus, the campus intent changes quite regularly. We regularly refresh our vision of the master plan, and it keeps on going. And these buildings now, I'm all delighted to say, have gone. So the yellow spaces, all of our lease spaces have gone. West Cross House, it's probably one of our worst buildings, and I'm delighted to say that as of this weekend, there won't be anybody left working in it anymore. So the whole sort of campus accommodation plan comes to a close this weekend. So this is the hub. You saw the hub. We've been back in. We've repurposed it. This was only 2 years after we left. We added 10,000 square feet of floor space in there. And we've moved in Now TV. I think there were about 70 people when I joined the business, nearly 4 years ago, and there are about 700 of them now. It's a phenomenally successful business, and our software engineers. And we actually built Scrum Walls. We actually built this space to be an agile engineering centre, not an agile workplace with a small a, but an agile engineering centre with a capital A, because it's a very institutionalised approach to software development and to space. And it's just created an incredible atmosphere in there. And the best little story from this space, and sort of what the sort of thing that makes you realise that you've done something quite special, is that because Scrum teams work very closely together, and they're sort of always in that space together. The other day, someone started applauding in sort of a local area a piece of great work, and a Scrum sort of discussion had just taken place, and that applause spread through the whole building. So you had all 3 floors of the building clapping all at the same time, because it started in one place and it just, like a Mexican wave almost, just went round the whole building. And that's when you know that actually what you're doing with the workplace is something incredibly special. We've knocked down the original Sky building to build a new car park. This photo is actually a little old now. It's half built, because parking is a big issue on a campus like this. That goes on. And like all of the best TV series, it's to be continued. Thank you. doing with the workplace is something incredibly special. We've knocked down the original Sky building to build a new car park. This photo is actually a little old now. It's half built because parking is a big issue on a campus like this. That goes on, and like all of the best TV series, it's to be continued. Thank you.